Hello, everybody, and welcome to Getting Inside the Right Now Mind. I'm Lisa Shield.
And I'm Benjamin Shield.
And it is wonderful to see you all today. It's been a little while. We've had a lot going on this summer, so it's great to be back. We want to talk today about something that we feel is one of the most important keys to dating successfully, and not just to dating successfully, but to having a successful relationship in the long term. So how you enter into a relationship will set the tone for the relationship you're going to have, right?
Right.
And it's so important that you think about, do I really want to have a super serious relationship where all we do is sit around and analyze and discuss things and process? Or do I want to have a relationship where we have primarily playfulness and laughter and fun? So today our talk is about having fun or being the kind of woman who knows how to have fun in a relationship and how sexy and attractive that is to a man. Want to talk about that, babe?
Well, I think we should go back 21 years to our first date.
Uh-huh. Well, yeah, go for it.
And, we were talking and eventually I asked what you're looking for, in a relationship. And what did you say?
Well, and I really want everyone to get this was completely unrehearsed. It really was just how I felt in that moment. I said to you, I have been working so hard on myself since I left my first husband, and I'm done working hard. What I really want is to find a great guy and have fun with him.
And I told you later that I secretly put my hands together and said, thank you, God. And that night I took my profile down.
Yeah, you did.
And because, men aren't looking for a relationship that's just about processing or about problems or about issues or about grist for the mill.
Right.
So many people say that relationships is about two people coming together and working through their issues. And ideally, two people come together where they have their issues already worked out, or at least are aware of them. And so they're not leading the relationship. It can be there, but it's what's leading the relationship is wanting to enjoy life and enjoy each other.
So one thing that women really need to understand about men, and I'm going to backtrack for a second, one of the foundational principles of the work that we do is really about helping women better understand men so that they can meet a man where he is and be able to make room for men. Women sometimes are so busy and we have so much going on and we're so complex that we fail, we overwhelm men, and we don't really create a space for them in the relationship. And men often feel when they come into relationships with us that they're going to have to give up very important, meaningful parts of their lives in order to accommodate a woman and make her happy. And so what we try to do is teach women how to have compassion for men and what they go through in life. So talk about why coming home to a woman who's fun and happy and positive is so important for a man.
Yeah, and first we want to say that a woman doesn't have to be two-dimensional,
right?
Like just fun and happy and playful. That we all have a complexity of emotions, and how our day went that day, and things in our mind. But again, we want to lead with how can we support each other. When I talk about two people going on a first date, I think about two puppies playing. There's no judgment, there's no grudge, there's no list of questions. They just play. And in an adult relationship, when two people have goodwill for each other and there's a lightheartedness, there's no grudges, there's no holding on to past issues, there's no, uh, just small-mindedness. Being fun is expansive, and processing, even though it seems expansive, could be very narrowing.
Right. So let's talk about a man's world. What is a man up against every day in his life, day to day at work? Talk about what a man deals with.
Well, a man deals externally with work, with maybe a job that he's kind of sacrificed his dreams to support a family or support a relationship. And jobs are never secure, ever, ever. And so he's worried about younger people coming up. He's worried about other people, taking his place, downsizing, all of those things, and competition, not with other companies. So he's always under pressure, always under pressure. And so and there's the internal pressure of a man perhaps aging, the issues with that, internal things, so that by the time a man gets home or a woman gets home, they could feel grounded down, particularly towards the end of the week. And to have someone help them lighten up their lives, enlighten their lives, is a gift, an absolute gift. I mean, Lisa and you and I have always had humor, always.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not to the exclusion of, important conversations or expressing our wants,
Mm-hmm.
but we do it in a way that we know that there's goodwill. And sometimes when there's humor interjected, then, it makes everything easier.
Mm-hmm. Well, so, one of the things you and I have talked about is how men, they are under so much intense pressure at work and competition from other men, as you said. And so when they come home, they want their relationship to be a refuge from all of that. They want to come home to a peaceful, safe, quiet, easygoing woman where they're not going to walk into, go from the frying pan into the fire. And a woman who is able to provide that is really going to be much more desirable to men because she understands what a deep, just need that is for a man. So if she can make room for that and not bring too much intensity and too much drama and over processing and all to the relationship, it's really a haven for a man and something that he looks forward to.
Yeah, and men can sense what the relationship might be like on the first date.
Mm-hmm.
As I say, if two people come in like two puppies playing, well, that's, men want more of that.
Mm-hmm.
There will be a second date. If a man is sitting across from a woman who may be objectively gorgeous,
Mm-hmm.
just beautifully coiffured and dressed and all of that, but there's no playfulness. There's no joy to the relationship. And if a man were to extrapolate 10, 15 years later and know that, well, this is a good-looking person, I'm attracted to her now, but there's no life to the relationship. There's no bounce. There's no playfulness. As opposed to a man sitting next to a woman, whatever she looks like, and there's playfulness, there's joy, there's laughing. That is, hitting it out of the park.
Well, and I think a lot of women listening to this right now might feel a bit resistant or even threatened by what we're saying, right? Like, if you're a woman who's been through difficult relationships, you feel like you've given everything you can to a man and all they've done is take advantage of you. Maybe some women listening are hearing, oh, so I have to put on an act and be like a 50s housewife. So, I'm going to have to dress up and put on heels and cook dinner and wear an apron and just smile, even though I'm dying inside. That feels fake and superficial. Talk about that.
Well, and of course, a man can sense when a woman is putting on an act. There should be a natural lightness of being, that spills over not just in the relationship, but spills over into the rest of a man and a woman's life. But when we got together, I would occasionally make a joke and you would just laugh and laugh. You wouldn't just laugh, you would write them down. You would enter them on your phone or in the computer. And that encouraged me to be funnier, to have more jokes. And the more I do, the more you write them down. And occasionally on a Valentine's Day or driving home from a trip, you'll read them back to me. Things I've completely forgotten. And we will just crack up because it was so much funnier the second time. And so, um, it's not so much putting on an act, but it's really navigating to what's light, what's good, what's fun.
But honey, what if, there was a time in my life where I wasn't having fun. I wasn't in a good place. I was really struggling. I'd been through terrible relationships. I had come out of a 13-year relationship with my ex-husband, who was a pathological liar. I was afraid of getting myself into another relationship like that. And I wasn't having fun. What about that? Because I think if I were listening to this right now, I would be like, well, that's ridiculous. Like, I want a partner that I can talk about my issues and my problems with and be authentic with.
Well, absolutely, without question. But there's a point where talking and processing and delving into the past again and again and again is a downward spiral. So that a little bit of fun where two people can talk about things, but also enjoy a laugh, turn on a Netflix comedy, whatever it might be, because it breaks that downward cycle of really just ingraining misery that has been in our lives.
Well, and I think it's very important too for women to understand that you don't want your partner to be your therapist. And if there is something serious going on, a chronic issue in your life that isn't getting resolved, or an underlying unhappiness or sadness, then it's a time to seek out help. I know I had tended in my younger years to be very introspective and dark in a lot of ways. And when we met, one of the agreements I made with myself was if I felt myself getting back into a darker place, I would seek out therapy rather than put that on you. Number one, because I love you and I don't want to burden you with my issues. I come to you all the time with things that are going on. But that being said, I may have a question or a problem I'm working through and I resolve it and move on. But if I felt that it was a chronic issue or something that may have a long-term negative impact on us, I would seek out therapy or I would talk to a girlfriend, but I wouldn't keep coming to you with those issues.
Right, right. And there have been those rare moments that I said, maybe you should talk this over with your girlfriend. Because I think that that natural frequency of two women speaking, there's more of an understanding about certain things, and men are just trying to catch up, trying to follow the conversation.
Yeah, and I don't take it personally because I understand that once you've given me your perspective, you don't want to sit and process it with me. You have your one perspective, and that's it. And I know it may be a 10 or 15-minute conversation, and that's about the bandwidth most men have. And then you lose them because they feel like they're going in circles. But I also knew that I didn't want that to be the way our relationship went. I had spent, and I'm sure you've been through this too, I had spent time talking ad nauseum in past relationships, trying to resolve problems and issues and things with exes, and it just didn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
It's like that saying that you can't solve a problem, with from the same energetic level from which it was created.
Yeah.
So if two people create the problem, they're probably ill-equipped to solve it because they created it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And if two people find that they're spiraling downward together, if one of them could just smile and find a moment of humor, it breaks the cycle. It breaks that downward spiral.
Well, and I also think it does take a fairly evolved person. We work on this with our women who go through END, Emotionally Naked Dating, which is our 12-week course. But we really look at helping women identify repeating relationship patterns, and not just identifying them and saying, oh my gosh, these are the patterns that are keeping me single and stuck and sabotaging not just my past relationships, but my future relationships. And then we show them how to look at their part, because they're the common denominator. So a big piece of being able to break these patterns is being able to take personal responsibility for your contribution to whatever is happening. I remember when I went through a 12-step program, one of the biggest learning lessons for me was keeping my own side of the street clean, and being able, if there was a mess in a relationship, to be able to take responsibility for my contribution and clean it up quickly so we could move on. And I think that is something to be in a very highly successful relationship where you are able to sustain the fun over many years. It means being able to go, oh, I see how I might have contributed to that. I'm so, let me clean up my side of the mess. And very often when you're with a self-aware partner like you, the other person will say, thank you so much. And I can see where, I might have contributed to this.
Yeah. And relationships, a big part of relationship is about learning.
Mm-hmm.
Learning more about ourselves, learning about relationship. And I'm going to paraphrase a Marianne Williamson quote, and you could probably fine-tune that for me. But she said, it's not up to you what you learn. It's whether you learn it through pain or through joy.
Right. You have a choice.
You have a choice. And so, one would, one of the great purposes of relationships is learning. I mean, neither one of us are the same person we were 21 years ago. And we're constantly learning and evolving because of the relationship we're in. But we chose to do it through joy. There's been very few moments of relationship pain. I would have to go back in my memory bank to even think of one.
Well, and one of our biggest, or one of my biggest lessons was when I heard that quote. And so something that a lot of people hear me say, what I said to you on our first date, which, when I said, I've been working so hard on myself and all I want to do is find a great guy and have fun. Most people emphasize the second part of what I said, but they miss the first part, which was, look, I have been working hard on myself. And what I meant by that was I had been going to workshops and therapy and reading books and doing everything I could to try to understand how to be happy and to pick a great partner. And it had been very, very, very hard work for years looking at my unhappiness and who I had been and how I had created a lot of the messes I'd made in my life and picked the wrong guys and stayed in those relationships too long. And so when I heard that Marianne Williamson quote, and it finally made sense to me that I was making it hard, that I was going to learn anyway, and lessons were going to continue to come throughout my life, because that is the way life is. Even if we think we have it all figured out, there's aging. As we're getting older, we're always having to reach new frontiers and unknown parts of our lives, and we have to learn how to be with those things. So I realized that life was going to continue to teach me, and I made a very conscious decision that I wanted to lighten up, I wanted to have more fun, and I wanted to be more playful. And so I consciously started to develop those qualities. And when I met you and I said that to you, I may have only just heard that Marianne Williamson quote, some months earlier, when I said, I'm done working hard and I just want to meet a great guy and have fun.
Also, on our first date, probably the only time in 21 years that I've been late for anything, and when I got lost on our first date, and I finally got a hold of, back then there was poor cell reception, and I finally got a hold of the restaurant and said, is there a woman who's been sitting there by herself for the last 20 minutes or so? And they said, yes. May I speak with her? And so they gave you the phone, and I apologized for being late. And what did you say?
I said, is everything okay? And then I said, I'm just sitting here enjoying myself. So enjoy, like I'm in joy. And by the way, just for everybody listening, my middle name is Joy, and Benjamin's mother's name was Joy. Just a little side note. But I was sitting there enjoying myself. It was fine. I wasn't worried. And I just said, take your time and I'll be here when you get here.
And for me, it let me walk in with my shoulders down and breathing, as opposed to, oh my gosh, there's two strikes against me, and we haven't even met. And knowing that that's how the rest of the relationship could be and has been a joy.
Yeah.
And if I come home, or we work from home, but at the end of the day, if it's been a tough day, or there are things going on in our lives that I know I don't have to guard myself. I don't have to put up walls, that I could just be myself and show my pain, but also there are times where we could just be silly. And, a lot of times we could be silly.
Yeah, and I got very clear that everything I was saying and doing in any given moment was showing a man who I am and how I handle situations. So while I learned how not to be permissive, like if something was really wrong or off, a guy kept canceling dates or whatever, or if you had kept arriving late for dates, I would have said something to you about it. But I learned how to just have grace and give people grace, because we all make mistakes. We all mess up. None of us is perfect, and certainly not me. And I knew that I would make mistakes in relationship, but what I wanted was a relationship where I could mess up and that we would be kind and forgiving with one another. And so that's who I needed to be. I'd grown up in a very punishing, critical, scrutinizing, childhood, where I got a lot of advice, like, negative advice, where my parents were trying to be helpful, and say mean things for my own good to toughen me up. But it was said in such a mean and demeaning way that I walked on eggshells for so much of my life. Being in this relationship with you has been something of a fairy tale, because you are so kind and you are so loving and compassionate. And the feedback that you give me is always with care, and you've never been mean to me, even in my worst moments, like the Airbnb recently. In that situation where I got so upset and with the owners, and I messed everything up, and I made the situation worse because I was so angry. And you were, even though I know you would have handled it differently, you had so much compassion for what I was going through and for how frustrated I was in that moment. And you took my side and just loved and supported me through it. Yeah. Yeah. And I love how sweet we've been able to be with each other. So we're not saying that you have to put on a front and that you can't be authentic, but it is so important that women look at how intense we tend to be. Many of us love deep and meaningful conversations, and we have this idea that we're not connecting unless we're deep and intense and having those kinds of conversations. What's that like for a guy?
Oh, it's just been a relief, and it's been able, for me, I've been able to walk through life lighter. So the lightness in our relationship has carried over into my career, my friendships, just daily interactions with the woman behind the dry cleaning counter, all of that, because the foundation for all of that is in our relationship.
Yeah, so let's talk about, honey, a few ways that women can just be more fun, or show a man that they're fun, where they can exhibit it. So, the first one is just going back to our first date and you running late is about being easygoing and forgiving, at least to a point.
Yeah. And for me, that it's almost like a hall pass that I could make occasional mistakes without. I've been in relationships where it seemed like one mistake was like cracking a diamond, and over the next 3 days, that crack just got deeper and deeper and deeper, to the point where one would forget what the initial incident was, but it would just be we would get dissociated from each other. We would begin to stonewall each other. We'd be depressed. We'd be snappy, irritable. And when that crack along the diamond doesn't happen, things just pass. We can't even remember them. But I remember, in past relationships, often those, one word that was the wrong word at the wrong time, inadvertently, could mean 3 days of drama.
Yeah.
And along with being forgiving is really not inducing a lot of drama into the relationship. You know, it does just that. Drama is fiction, you know, or fictionalized nonfiction, but it's fiction. And when people add a lot of drama, it's almost like now there are two avatars in the relationship that are having the relationship, not the real people. They're carrying out this drama, and it's so unnecessary.
Well, but what about people who are in relationships, women who are in relationships where they feel that the man just doesn't understand them? And so once something happens, like you said, it is like that fissure in a diamond that just gets bigger and bigger, but it starts to open up that feeling like he just doesn't get me, and he's never going to get me, and no matter what I say or do, I don't feel understood in this relationship.
Well, if that's the case, and you may add quite a bit to this, but there's a point where two people just aren't able to communicate. They're just different people, different core values, uh, different different ways of being. And as you say, all we can do is keep our side of the street clean. You know, we can come in open, forgiving, um, and if it's not reciprocated, then it's perhaps an orange flag or even a red flag.
Well, and one of the things I would share for everybody is that it is so important that we take responsibility for our part. And one of the things that I started to do was really clean up my side of the street, as I said earlier. And I began to get clearer and clearer and clearer on what that actually looked like. So the more I practiced doing that, the clearer I became, and the more I was able to see other people clearly. So I would look at, am I being clean in the way I'm clearing up my side? Is there anything that I'm doing to try to put my stuff on the other person? Am I trying to coerce this other person into taking responsibility for his part? Is there anything in what I'm saying that may subtly be still blaming him? Like I'm trying to like I'm taking responsibility for my part, but you need to take responsibility for your part too. So I became more and more and more clean and clear about how I cleaned up my side of the street. And as I did that, I was able to see other people clearly. And that was the biggest shift for me. I mean, that was a huge shift, especially when I met my imposter. And an imposter is somebody who you think may actually be your future partner, who turns out to be anything but. And when I initially met this man, I was just being my best self. I had been doing a tremendous amount of work, and I thought, wow, okay, this is it. I finally met my guy. And I knew in my heart of hearts that I couldn't have shown up better. I couldn't have been kinder, more understanding, more lovely than I was. And he began to project on me. He started to get hot and cold. He did that push-pull thing, and eventually he just dumped on me. And what I realized from that, honey, is that I don't care what kind of feedback you have for me, but if I'm being kind and loving and thoughtful in the way I am with you, I expect the same in return. And if I feel that you are gaslighting me or projecting or being mean in the way that you're giving me feedback, that doesn't work. So that was a huge turning point. Another way to really show a man how fun you are is to laugh at his jokes.
Oh, which it means the world to me.
Mm-hmm.
and it makes me even funnier,
Uh-huh.
which lightens the relationship even more, which, and the lighter the relationship, the easier it is to talk about things. You
Yes.
could imagine how much easier it is to talk about even deep issues if there's a lightness, if there's a lightheartedness. It doesn't mean that we have to joke about serious things, but we know that it's not going to be so heavy and burdensome,
Mhm.
and the other person's going to take it down even further than you take it down even further. But if there's just this, you know, foundation of lightheartedness, it's so much easier to talk about even the most difficult things.
Well, and something so important about laughter is that it shows that you're on the same page, that you see life in a similar way. So it brings deeper compatibility to a relationship. And it also really boosts a man's ego when a woman thinks he's funny.
It's huge. It's huge. And laughter is like a reset button.
Mhm.
Whatever's going on,
Yeah.
laughter just like makes it a clean slate.
Yes.
It just etches sketches everything. Yeah.
For those of you, I think Etch-a-Sketches are still around, but how you draw in an Etch-a-Sketch and then you shake it and you clear you clear the whole screen.
Right.
Yeah.
And so laughter is like that reset button.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it you can imagine when two people are laughing together, there's this bonding that happens. I think that's why people like to go to comedy shows rather than see it on Netflix, because it's bonding with the entire audience, not just laughing at the screen.
Yeah.
So
we have a client who's with a guy, and she said when she first met him, he was telling all these like really bad like dad jokes, and she was rolling her eyes and thinking, "Oh my God, is this really his level of humor?" And now, after being together, I think they just celebrated their 1-year anniversary, and she was saying how endearing it is. When she put it all in context and she got to really know him, she now finds it so endearing. We have another friend who I was talking with yesterday, just a few days ago, and we were talking about how funny you are, and she was telling me that her partner said to her how funny he is, and she said to him, "I don't think you're funny." And he said, "I think I'm so funny when I'm at home on my own. I crack myself up." And she actually said to him, "Yeah, I don't find you funny."
Oh.
Can you imagine? Oh. What that would do to a man's ego?
Horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible.
Yeah.
Because humor is also a measure of someone's wit and playfulness and lightness and, and how they want to project themselves to the world, and often. And if someone is disregarding that or disrespecting that, it's terrible. I couldn't, I would never, I share that because don't ever say that to a man, especially when he's telling you that he thinks he's so funny. That would just be like a punch to the gut for a man. And I don't know how this particular man responded, but that would be incredibly hurtful and something he would carry around with him. Probably not even wanting to share his jokes and humor. It would cause him to pull back and not say things because he'd be waiting for her to laugh, and it would just break his heart that she wouldn't. And they've been in a very, very, very long relationship, so that was hard to hear. And another way that you can show a man how fun you are is by intentionally lightening up a conversation. If it is getting too deep or too dark, either catching yourself and saying, "Oh my gosh, wait a minute," whatever, and just bringing it back, bringing some levity or some humor. Especially, I want to put it out there to women, look at a man's face
And especially watch if his eyes start to glaze over. And I know you may feel that too. Sometimes, especially in the beginning, when you're first getting to know somebody in the first few dates, it's important to keep things a little bit on the lighter side and not get too deep. So watch a man's eyes and see if he starts to glaze over. After 21 years, it still happens with us, and I can pull myself back.
Or maybe not physically, but you sense he's slowly backing up towards the door.
Yes, yeah, looking for the exit. Or if he starts moving, turning around, looking for the way out, or asking for the check prematurely. But you want to, the truth is, two people can be as emotionally connected or more so when they're having fun together, so it can be nerve-wracking on the first few dates to be getting to know each other and trying to make a connection. And keeping it light and casual can set both people at ease, and it'll allow you to see if there is conversational chemistry. That spark and that playfulness that's going to lead to not just fun in the relationship, but also in the bedroom. It's going to show that you can sort of navigate life together playfully, and it makes somebody else feel good when you keep the conversation light. Also, it is so important to know that deep topics can be very vulnerable, and you may need to build up trust and safety. We have a lovely client in our mastermind group who went on a date with a man, and she came back to one of our sessions, our Q&A sessions, and she said, I really like him, but the conversation didn't really go anywhere. It just felt like something was missing, and I wanted to know how to get him to open up a little bit more. And she went on the next date and used some of the techniques that we shared, and he opened up to her. But it took some time for him and a little coaxing for this man to start to open up. So deeper, more vulnerable subjects may not be something a lot of men are comfortable sharing on those first few dates.
Yeah. And on that first date, you can imagine how a man would feel if someone comes in with a list of questions.
Yeah.
And it feels like they're in a job interview. And there's nothing fun about answering, where'd you go to school? Do you have brothers and sisters? Do you like dogs? Although the important things will come up, but you could imagine how a man would feel if someone comes in with a certain lightness and playfulness and fun. I mean, you had a friend who you were at a coffee shop, like a Starbucks, and she wanted to get the attention of a guy sitting, at the next table. And she took the wrapper from the straw and watered it up, and she just threw it at his head.
It was very funny and very audacious. I couldn't have done that, but it was amazing. And he just looked around and he saw her smiling like a Cheshire cat, and he burst out laughing, and it already set the tone for a very playful interaction. Yeah. So if you're on a date and it's getting too intense, especially on those first few dates, you can, and maybe he asks you a question about your divorce or your former relationship, and you're not ready to share something, you might just say, I would love to share more about this as we get to know each other, and have you seen Oppenheimer? I just saw it the other night, and oh my God, what an amazing film. So you can bring it to, some current event, something that just happened in your life, or I just got the most incredible new puppy, and he's adorable. Would you like to see some pictures? I have thousands. But bring it into the present moment, something that's more current, and learn how to artfully shift a conversation. Or if that man is going on and on and on about something, one of my favorite lines from one of my original coaches that I worked with was, may I pause you for a second?
Right. And it can be appropriate to interject something that changes the subject. I remember we were on a trip once and the taxi driver was going on and on and on about politics or about, it was just a negative conversation. And I just said, where's the best place to get a steak in the city? And it completely, he lit up. He went on for about 10 minutes. Well, I've had steak here, but this one's like this and this. And it changed everything. So, just
anything
that just, because things could feel like a record that's stuck in a groove.
Yes.
And if you can unstick that groove and keep things moving with a little humor, a change of subject, a lightness.
And don't judge people right away. Somebody may get in a groove. Something may be on someone's mind. Somebody may be a little slower to open up. I think everybody has this idea that you're just going to meet somebody and click and there's going to be instantaneous rapport and you will just get each other and fall in love and live happily ever after. And we all know how that works out.
Right.
So, some people especially, think about this. A real man isn't going to just open up to anybody and everybody. He's going to take his time. And most men are not going to just tell you their entire life story on the first date. So give them a chance to open up to you and coax it along and let it unfold and enjoy the playfulness and have fun. And don't just make a decision right then and there that it's not going to work just because that rapport isn't instantaneous. Yeah. All right. Well, this has been fun, honey. Thank you. It's been lovely spending this time with you.
It's been a joy.
I don't know if you all get this, but this is just another chance for the two of us to hang out and talk for a little while. So I love this man, and I'll take as much of him as I can get. So this has been Getting Inside the Right Male Mind. I'm Lisa Shield.
And I'm Benjamin Shield.
Thank you so much for joining us. Please go to my website, lisashield.com. Click the button to watch my free 45-minute presentation. If you want to find the guardian of your soul and have a relationship like Benjamin and I have, we've taught hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, through our broadcasts, our podcast, and our 12-week Emotionally Naked Dating course, how to do this. It's a lot easier than you think when you have the right formula. And please send us ideas for future topics to podcast@lisashield.com. You can also rate and like this podcast. We want to hear from you authentically. Please let us know your genuine thoughts. If we're getting it right, we want to know. And if we're getting it wrong, we want to know. We can't know unless you tell us. And I think that's it. So have a great rest of your day. We will see you next time. And never give up on love. Keep searching, but don't give up on love. This is the most beautiful part of life, having a lover, a playmate, and a best friend to share it with. Take care, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.